Shalom Aleichem. How many here are somewhat Yiddish challenged? Okay. So we have some notion of how to play with our bilinguality. Seid gegrüßt alle zu dem 61. Nusakh Vilne, ich darf sagen, zu der 61. Nusakh Vilne Konzert und Lektie. Today is exactly 71 years since the beginning of the ghetto liquidation in Vilna on September 21st, 1943. An assembly that began as family and friends coming together to memorialize from an organization that had its genesis in wanting to uphold and extend the cultural tradition of Vilna, has turned into an important community event where folks don't come to mourn, but to remember, to celebrate, and to extend that cultural tradition and enrich our present lives through it. Mit dem begrüße ich euch, ich rede sei auf Jiddisch, sei auf Englisch. Aber das habe ich gewollt, dass alle sollen können, verstehen. Der YIVO-Vorsitzender Jonathan Brent kann mit uns heute nicht sein. Aber eine Begrüßung hat geschickt mit einer Aufklärung für was nicht. And I would like to invite Yelena, the Director of Programs of YIVO, to present Jonathan Brent's official welcome.
Hello, welcome. My name is Yelena. I'm the Public Program Director here at YIVO. A little louder. Is this better? On behalf of Jonathan Brent, Shana Tova and welcome to this year's Nusakh Vilna Memorial Program. I cannot share this special day with you because I am in Vilnius with Suzanne Leon, YIVO's Director of Development, where YIVO has sponsored an exhibition of the life of Tzemach Shabbat, who, as many of you know, was a beloved doctor in Vilna and the father-in-law of one of YIVO's founders, Max Weinreich, head of YIVO in Vilna, and then the first director of YIVO in New York until the mid-1960s. Under Max Weinreich, YIVO grew in stature, both as a great center of research into the history of East European Jewish life, and particularly the history of the Yiddish language. But YIVO also became a beloved communal organization, which captured the aspirations of Jews throughout the Yiddish-speaking world for building a national identity and consciousness of themselves as a people united by tradition, language, and historical memory. Building this national consciousness remains the foundation of YIVO's work today. And it is all the more important in the United States, now the center of the Jewish diaspora, as Eastern Europe was in the early 1900s. Shimon Dubnov, whose vision of Jewish history was one of the inspirations of YIVO's founding in 1925, often noted that without a history, one has no future. YIVO's vast archives provide the basis upon which our collective history of 1,000 years in Eastern Europe can be written. And it is for this reason that I am in Vilnius today instead of in New York with you today. Because YIVO is now intent on reuniting the archives in New York with the fragment that was saved from destruction in the Holocaust in Vilna. During the war, the Nazis forced YIVO slave laborers to select books and documents for shipment to Frankfurt, Germany, where they would become part of the Institute for the Study of the Jewish Question. In 1945, the US Army discovered these materials in a warehouse and shipped them to YIVO in New York. However, these same YIVO slave laborers hid many precious books and documents in bunkers in the Vilna Ghetto, and after the war, Avram Sutzkever and others found many of these materials and built a museum of the Jewish people in Vilnius. The Soviets, however, destroyed the museum in 1948 and sent these books and documents to the pulping mill to finish what Hitler had begun, the total eradication of Jewish culture in Europe. But these materials were saved a second time, this time by a courageous Lithuanian librarian who secretly removed them from the pulping mill and hid them in the basement of a church where they remained hidden until 1989. The project YIVO is now undertaking will digitally reunite these materials in Vilnius with those here in New York. The project, known as the Vilna Project, will preserve these materials and create the largest digital website devoted to Yiddish language works, as well as the largest library devoted to the history of the Jewish people of Eastern Europe in the world. In Vilnius, Suzanne and I are meeting with government officials, the heads of the Lithuanian National Library and the Central State Archives, and leaders of the Jewish community of Lithuania to launch this project. I believe that Max Weinreich would be proud of this undertaking. The heroic history of the Jewish partisans during World War II, those who fought in the ghettos and resisted simply by what Yehuda Bauer calls amidah, witnessing, the courage and commitment of Jews everywhere, past and present, to never forget their history and to pass it on to future generations, is the only guarantee of our survival. Nusakh Vilna commemorates this courage, focuses our attention on the limitless power and strength of our mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, who are a symbol of that survival and an inspiration for our future. Thank you very much. Ellie?
Auf der Bühne stehen zwei Licht und Reusen. Die Reusen, die ermahnen uns an einen Blutverguss von die umgekommenen Kedoshim auf Kiddush Hashem, auf Kiddush Ha'am, was mir gedenken durchzünden die Licht bei der heutigen Unternehmung. Ich will beten für Sulas Chibuk, was ist allein ein Leben gebliebene von Churben. Und auf der Befreiung hat man ihr befreit von Stutthof, Sklavenlager, anzuheben ein neues Leben. Frau Chibuk, tut uns dem Covid Licht zu zünden. Uns vorlehnen von der jiddischen Poesie, auf Jiddisch, auf Übersetzung, werden uns Mechane sein, Mechabed sein, Ruth Baran-Gerold, meine Jugendchaverte, allein als Erzieherin auf Englisch und auf Jiddisch und noch hier wird vorlehnen Heike Perecman. Heike euch am Sprache Chaverte und sie ist euch die Direktorsche von The New World Theater Projekt, was verewigt jiddische Theater durch ihre eigene englische Übersetzung. Rutge?
The poem that I will read is called Frozen Jews, Verfrorene Jiden, von Avram Sutzkever. I'll read it in Yiddish first, and then the translation is by Cynthia Ozick. Verfrorene Jiden, hast du gesehen über Felder mit Schnee, verfrorene Jiden, Array noch Array, sie liegen an Atem, vermürmelt und blau, nur teut is in seire Körpers nicht ho. Weil's finkelt, euch ärgert's verfreurender Geist, wie a gildener Fisch in a Chvalje vereist. Sie reden nicht, schweigen nicht, jet wird Tracht, und die Sonne liegt verfreuren in Schnee auf bei Nacht. Es glitt auf a roslicher Lieb in Gefrier, a Schmeichel und kann sich nicht geben kein Rier. A Trott lebender Mammen liegt hungerig's Kind und Modne, sie kann es nicht sägen a Zind. Uns gliwert a Fäust bei a nacketen Greis und kann nicht sein Keuch befreien von Eis. Hab allerlei Teuten versucht, bis er Herr, uns kenn mich schon keiner nicht wundern mehr. Nur a Zind in der julige Hitz auf a Gass befallt mich a Frost, wie es befallt mich a Gass. Es geht mich an Kecken das blaue Gebein, verfreurene Jiden auf schneeigen Plain. Mein Haut wird bezeugen mit milmerner Schicht und abstellen nimmt sich das Wort und das Licht. Und euch mein Bewegung verfriert, wie beim Greis, was kennt sein Keuch befreien von Eis. Frozen Jews. Have you seen in fields of snow frozen Jews row on row, blue marble forms lying, not breathing, not dying? Somewhere the flicker of a frozen soul, glint of fish in an icy swell, all brood, speech and silence are one. Night snow encases the sun. A smile glows, immobile from a rose lip's chill. Baby and mother, side by side, odd that her nipples dried. Fist fixed in ice of a naked old man, the powers undone in his hand. I've sampled death in all guises, nothing surprises. Yet a frost in July in this heat, a crazy assault in the street, I and blue carrion face to face, frozen Jews in a snowy space. Marble shrouds my skin, words ebb, light grows thin. I'm frozen, I'm rooted in place, like the naked old man enfeebled by ice. Moscow, July 10th, 1944.
This is a poem by Bela Schaechter Gottesman. This is a poem by Bela Schaechter Gottesman. It's called Ihr seid gekommen. You came. I will do the Yiddish first, and the English translation is my own afterwards. Ihr seid gekommen, Brüder, von Weiten, von hintern eisernem Vorhang aher. Ihr hat gespalten zusammen und gratis, von Moskwe und Teige bis Sibir. Gekommen zu fliehen, a Wunder, a Ness, von Moskwe, Kiew, Vilne, Odess, von Kishinev, Belz, von Tschernowitz, stolze Eden, gegossen von Arz. Jahren von Warten in Hunger und Not, verloren die Stelles, der Stand und das Brett. Jahren von heldischer Erkegenstell, der eiserner Faust, das spöttische Wort. Wer sagt Nissim seinen Chemo gewinn? Set vor unsere Egen an es geschehen. Gekommen zu fliehen, a lichtiger Ness. Von Moskwe, Kiew, Vilne, Odess. You came from great distances, brothers, from behind an iron curtain. You tore down fences, broke bars off windows, from tundra and taiga all the way to Sibir. You rushed to our aid, wondrous, miraculous, from Moskva, Kiev, Vilne, Odess, from Kishinev, Belz, and Tchernowitz, proud Jews cast in ore. For years we were destitute, we waited, we starved, lost our jobs, our standing, our bread. Years of defending ourselves heroically with an iron fist, a false word. To those who say miracles never happen, we saw one with our own eyes when you came rushing to our aid from Moskva, Kiev, Vilna, Odessa.
Bei der Piano wird sein Binyumen Schaechter und uns zu singen wird sein Yelena Shmulenson. Ben Schaechter is the renowned composer, director of the Jewish People's Philharmonic Chorus, with credits to his name that run too long for this program. Yelena, a dramatic artist, a singer in 5 languages, also a reader of audiobooks. You'll recognize her from A Serious Man, but from a whole bunch of other places. And together they are an incomparable duo of sense and sensibility in Yiddish music.
Vilna, the city full of life and innocence. How often do I think of you, and I remember you in a foggy glow. Every time I think of you, a tear rolls down my cheek. Your streets, your mountains, your forests. I remember everything. My city, Vilna. Vilna, Stadt von Geist und Mimes. Vilna, jiddischlich vertracht, wo es murmeln stillet vieles, stilles Heudes von der Nacht. Oftmals seh ich dir in Cholem, es geliebte Vilna mein, und die alte Vilna Ghetto in a neppeldicken Schein.
Bänkschaft unbegehr. Ach, wie oft es ruft dein Namen von mein Auge äußert Tränen. Vilne Gesslach, Vilne Teichen, Vilne Wälder, Berg und Tal. Ebbes neuet, ebbes bängt sich noch die Zeiten von einmal. Sei dem Wäldele Sakrete in sein Schatten eingehielt, wo Geheimes haben Lehre, unser Wissen durchgestillt. Vilne hat dem ersten Vater von der Freiheitsmann gewebt und die liebe Kinder ihre mit der Zartengeist belebt. Vilne, Vilne, unser Heimstatt, unser Bänkschaft unbegehr. Ach, wie oft es ruft dein Namen von mein Auge äußert Tränen. Vilner Gesslach, Vilner Teichen, Vilner Wälder, Berg und Tal. Ebbes neuet, ebbes bängt sich noch die Zeiten von einmal. Vilner Gesslach, Vilner Teichen, Vilner Wälder, Berg und Tal. Ebbes neuet, ebbes bängt sich noch die Zeiten von
Shh, quiet. Be still. Only graves grow here. All the roads lead to the Panar forest. There's no hope. Be quiet, child. Please don't cry. It won't help. Outside it's spring, but in our hearts it's autumn. The river is covered with ice, and your father is gone. We have to be quiet until these gates fall. The ice will melt on the river, and your father will come back, and the light of freedom will shine on your face. Stiller, stiller.
Stiller, stiller, lass mich schweigen, quor im Wachsen da. Es haben sie verpflanzt die Sonne im grünen See zum Blau. Es führen Wegen zu Panar zu, es führt kein Weg zurück. Ist der Tate wo verschwunden und mit ihm das Glück. Stille Kind, meins Wehn nicht heut, es helft nicht kein Gewehn. Unser Unglück wollen so dem sei wir nicht verstehen. Es haben Breges nur die Jammen, es haben Twiese solche zusammen. Noch war unser Bein kein bissel Schein, kein bissel Schein. Frühling auf ein Land gekommen und uns Herbst gebracht, ist der Tag einfüllt mit Blumen und seht nur die Nacht. Goldig scheint der Herbst auf Stammens Blit in uns der Zar. Bleibt verjossemt, wo am Mames Kind geht auf Panar. Wie die Vilja geschmiedet euch gejochten Bein, ziehen Kriege Eis durch Litte hitzt in Jammerein. Es wird der Heuschech Wut zerrunnen, von der Finster leichter Sonnen, Wellen quallen uns in Herz herum. Bis der Teuer wird nicht fallen sein, wir müssen stumm. Frei nicht kind sich, ist ein Schmeichel, jetzt vor uns verrat. Sein dem Frühling soll der Säune wie in Herbstablatt. Soll der Qual sich ruhig fließen, stille sein und hoff. Mit der Freiheit kommt der Tate. Schlafsche Kind, mein Schlaf. Wie die Willi befreite, wie die Bäume grün beneite, leicht bald Freiheitslicht auf dein Gesicht, auf dein Gesicht.
Leichte Freiheitslicht auf dein Gesicht. Freedom's light illuminates your countenance, your face. And that's what we're doing here. Our faces illuminated by the freedom's light that the mother expressed to her child in that song, Stille, Stille, that even amidst all of the death and the destruction, there'll be those whose faces will alight with a light of freedom in the spirit of Yiddishkeit that characterized Vilna. Es ist 61 Jahre Nusakh Vilne und die Nusakh Vilne Unternehmung. Aber es ist 71 Jahre wie die Ghetto in Vilne hat man liquidiert. Und Vilne ist bekannt gewesen wie Hashem Dover, Jerusalem, die Litte, der geistige Zentrum von Jiddischland. Geistig sei in Ruchnies, in meistische Das, von Glauben, von Betochen, von Religion. Sei geistig, geschichtlich, sei geistig, politisch. Dem ersten vor dem in Freiheitsform ist gewesen, was es hat sich dort geschaffen, der Bund. Vilne ist gewesen, der Kisse von Vilna Goyen, the chief of the Misnagdim, but also a hotbed of Chabad, the compromise of Hasidism with the Vilna intellectual tradition. Und Heintafke, Nächten hat man genommen, sagen Slichis. Yesterday, I believe, was the first day of reciting the Slichis, the penitential prayers. Mittwoch in Abend, weil wir begrissen dem neuen Jahr. Und wenn es kommt zu Slichis, der Mann sich damit an a Perecman. How many of you are familiar with the story by Peretz, Oib nicht noch herrich, not higher? Oh, okay. And it's about a chassid, but it's also about a Litvak. And what is the center of Litvakis? What was the capital of Litvakis? Vilna. I'm glad somebody knows. Okay, so I'm going to have to retell the story a little bit. So, a Litvak winds up in the town of Nemerov just as they were going to say Slichos. And even though he's a Litvak and Nemerov has a Hasidic Rebbe, and the Litvakis used to scoff at the Hasidic Rebbeim, still one needs to pay one's respect. And so he goes to look for the Rebbe, and he's not anywhere to be found. Not in the synagogue, not in the study hall, in the marketplace, never. And so he asks, "Who is the Rebbe?" And they say, "What do you mean where the rabbi is?" "Oh, he's in the heavens. He's in the heavens arguing with God, pleading with God, pleading with the Rebbeinu Shalom. There are so many things that a Rebbe, who is seen as the intermediary among the Hasidim, so many things that one has to ask for health and for parnosa and to keep the pogroms away. Every slichus time the Rebbe disappears and he goes to heaven to talk with God. And the Litvak says, not on your life. Even Moshe Rabbeinu never got to speak to the Rebbeinu Shalom and put him upon him face to face. But a Litvak is eingespart. Was heißt eingespart? Stubborn. A Litvak is eingespart. And he is going to find out what the truth is, and so he steals into the Rebbe's house, spends the night under the Rebbe's bed. Others would have trembled in fear being in the presence of the Rebbe alone. But a Litvak, what does he do? He recites full tractates of the Talmud by heart. Litvaks know that kind of stuff. In the morning, before anyone is awake, he hears the bed creak, he hears the rabbi groan. If you ever heard a groan of this rabbi, this Rebbe, your heart would melt, but not a Litvak, he has a heart of stone. And he hears the Rebbe do what a Jew has to do, and he does the bracha on Latilas Yadayim, and he follows the Rebbe as he goes into the kitchen. In a closet, he takes out a whole bundle of clothing, peasant clothes. He puts them on with peasant boots. He ties his loin with a rope, and in the corner of the closet, from the closet, he pulls out an axe. The Litvak has got him now. This Rebbe not only is not going to heaven, but he's nuts. And he follows the Rebbe as the Rebbe steals out of town and into a small wood, and he stops and he examines the wood and finds a small tree and begins to knock down the tree, and the tree he splits into logs, and the logs he splits into kindling, and he takes the rope from his loins and he ties it up. And the Litvak is watching this all and not believing a thing he's seeing. Even of Hasidim, they couldn't be that crazy. And the Rebbe returns quietly to town, and in the outskirts he stops at a tiny shack, a shambles of a shack. And he knocks on the door, and you can hear inside the voice of a very weak person. Where is this? An old Jewish woman. Ya Vasil, he says, pretending to be Ukrainian, I guess. Was will dir, Vasil? Stochot, what do you want? I've come to sell you some wood. And not waiting for an answer, he walks into the hut, and he sees, covered in rags, an old woman in a freezing hut. And she says, I can't buy from you. I have nothing to pay you with. He says, don't worry. I'll trust you. And she says, but I can't. And he says, look, woman, here I am, a goy, a peasant. I'm willing to trust you the few cents for the wood. You say you have such a great God. I have faith in you. Do you? You don't have faith in your own God? It'll be okay. She says, but who will kindle this for me? My son is off at work. He only comes home for Shabbos. And he says, I will. And begins to kindle the little tin stove, and he kindles it. And as he begins to kindle, he says the first pisman, the first portion of the Shlichus prayer. And then the second, and as it lights up, he says the third pisman. He closes the little door. It warms the whole hut. He bids her goodbye. He steals back into town. And the Litvak follows her. The stubborn, eingeactionter Litvak, man vielleicht noch sagen, ein Litvak als Seele im Kopf. And the Litvak remained in that town. He stayed there. He chose to live there. And when people would say of their Rebbe during Slichas time that he ascends to the heavens, the Litvak wouldn't contradict them, but he would add quietly, Oib nit noch hecher, if not higher still. As a child growing up, it's a lovely, lovely story. As a child growing up, I always thought the hero was the Rebbe, and he is a hero. But in today's context, the hero is also the Litvak. And Peretz loves to romanticize and take out the best of Yiddish culture. So the Chassid the Rebbe was personifying the finest in simple decency and restoring of faith in God through the faith in their fellow human beings, Jew or non-Jew. Through maisim, through actions. The Litvak was following the rigorous Vilna tradition. Something seems not to make sense, what do you go do? You go and explore and you find out. Once he saw the truth, he didn't only see the truth, but he saw the higher truth of what he was witnessing. And that too was the Vilna intellectual tradition of the stubborn Litvakis. And once he saw the higher truth, he was willing to change his life based upon that realization. In a sense, that's the tradition that we are celebrating as we remember the Vilna Shehoyo, the Vilna that was, and the Vilna that can inject a much deeper sense of Yiddishkeit in our lives today. Our featured speaker is going to show how that tradition was able to express itself even in the direst circumstances in the Vilna Ghetto. Our speaker is Menachem Kaiser. And Menachem Kaiser is a writer and journalist, written in the Atlantic and New York and even the Wall Street Journal, and was a Fulbright Fellow in Lithuania, where he studied post-Holocaust narrative and memory, taught American literature and Jewish culture at Vilnius University, we're colleagues. Menachem did a very interesting thing, and it connects to Nusakh Vilna, but I'll let you do the connection. On the basis of the history of the Jews of Vilna and the ghetto, and using as a source book Kruk's Togbuch from Vilna Ghetto, Menachem created a way of exploring the ghetto of Vilna online. And hopefully at some point, even when you're in Vilna. And so he, under YIVO auspices, created the program called reVilna. And I would like to ask Menachem Kaiser to come and introduce us to that program.
Shalom Aleichem. It's the first time I've ever presented this that I'm able to start with Shalom Aleichem. I moved to Vilnius in 2010, 2011. Without actually planning this project, my research was focused on post-Holocaust narrative using Yiddish as something that I call the post-vernacular. And when I got there, the way I picked where I wanted to live was just I picked where all the restaurants were, where the bars were, where all my friends told me to live. And then a couple months later, I got an email from a travel agency in Berlin, and they said, this is almost a verbatim quote, they said, "You're Jewish, you seem to know what you're talking about, do you want to be a tour guide of the Vilna Ghetto?" And I said, yeah. And I didn't actually know much about the Vilna Ghetto before I started being a tour guide for it. And I found out, I went and I did my research, and I found out a lot of information, some of which I'll share with you today, but I found out much more complicated, much more interesting, much more personal is that I lived on the border of it. And I had lived there for nearly 6 months at this point, in middle of Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania, which is the most populous, most cultural, the wealthiest city in the region. And I lived maybe 30 meters from the gate of the Vilna Ghetto, of Ghetto 2, and I'll show you that in a minute, without knowing. And this really took me aback, and it was something that was really surprised and something that I found very almost painful, that I could be in a space and not know anything about its history or anything about its connection to the ghetto. Over the next couple of months, I started doing research, and I'm going to talk about the Crook Tochbuch in a second, but let me show you the map. So this is, I'm going to get a little bit technical. What I did in order to create the map, I went through probably about 70 to 80 text sources, plus museums, plus some memoirs, plus about 150 photographs, and I pulled out any single place I could find that had a geographical point. So anyone I could find, I said, here's the hospital, here's Vilna Ghetto, here's the gate of the Vilna Ghetto, here's the second ghetto, here are the schools. And I would like to mention here how critical Herman Crook's book was. This was the book that Elliott was telling me before that his father, Alav Shalom, was how frustrated he was that they didn't translate it quicker. And I would like to say here as a kind of response, and the kind of work that went into the book is unparalleled among anything I've ever seen. And I didn't know until today that it was co-sponsored by Nusakh Vilna. The book, how edited it is and how meticulous it is, it's the one, I would say, the source book that made something like this possible, that even made details like addresses, they double-checked. So I would like to extend my gratitude to Nusakh Vilna for making that possible, and really for providing the basis for my own research. So what I did, I found about 200 what I called points of interest. So that would include a hospital, a school, the gate 2, where a specific incident happened. And I found about 100 photographs. I took these from the YIVO archive, the Vilna Ghetto State Museum, which is an official state museum in Lithuania, and also the Ghetto Fighters House, which is in the north of Israel near Netanya. And what I did, and the biggest challenge I had, was organizational. So I had about 200 things. I put them on a spreadsheet. I put the longitude and I put the latitude next to it, and I put a live map that say where it was. So let me show you, and I made these tours. So here's the formation of a ghetto. And this is one type of tour I had. So this says on August 31st, 1941, there was something called the Great Provocation, where a German or Lithuanian soldier, we're not quite sure, went to the second floor of a building about 20 meters from my own apartment and took a shot at German soldiers, missed. Immediately there were cries that Jews did it. They ran up into the building, went out, accused the Jews of starting this, shot 2 Jews dead on the street, and used it as a pretext for clearing the whole space of the ghetto. And 6 days later, on September 6, 1941, the Vilna Ghetto began. And I have about, around the map, probably about between 90 and 110 different images of photos. So this is the text of that Great Provocation. You could cycle, yep. It's a little faint. Sorry. So this is one type of tour where I do time element. It zooms in. This was the prison that most Jews were sent to en route to Pinar. And let me mention, one of the very interesting that came when I did my own research in the ghetto was that, and like Elliott said, it really wasn't about death that I found. There were about 60 to 80,000 Jews living in Vilnius before 1939 to 1941. Maybe about 2% survived. Somewhere between 500 and 1,000 Jews survived. And almost none of them, not almost none, but the vast majority of them did not die in the ghetto. The vast majority of them died in Pinar, which is a forest about 10 kilometers outside the city. And this was something that became very interesting. That means the ghetto, in many ways, which existed for 2 years, about 18 months of those 2 years were a more or less stable environment, an exceptional amount of life was there. So, and this one, So just to see all these things that you see up over here were, I have an entire of education, health and education. All the yellow dots that you see were schools. And to give you a sense of how small this place was, this was probably between, let's say between 10th Street and maybe 15th and 1 Avenue. Okay, so we're talking 1 square kilometer, 2 square kilometers. And to give you a sense of the density of schools, there was at least 7 schools that I know about and were able to locate. So this includes, we're talking almost the entire children's population was enrolled in school, with an exceptional health education, with exceptional policing of all these things. If children had to be in school, they had to get checked for lice. So the health department, education department worked together, they coordinated. And these were things that I found that it was very hard to represent in another way, because these were things like about texture, about life. And if a layman would go and look at the books, there's an exceptional amount of information, and you would really just kind of plow through. And what happens is, especially 60, 70 years after the destruction of the ghetto, you kind of lose the sense of a place. You kind of forget that this was actually a place, and it becomes an idea. And the idea becomes that a lot of Jews were rounded up and a lot of Jews died. And it is that idea. But what I wanted to really show with my map, that was something a lot more. Something where a lot of Jews lived, and they created a very special place, which I considered unique. I want to show you 2 things that, because of the map, I was able to see that weren't clear in my own research, and haven't really, it's something that the map was able to provide a unique perspective that a book or basic text wouldn't. So this is the resistance. On September 1st, 1941, there was one day where the resistance, the FPO, and something called Yechiel's group in the Vilna Ghetto successfully resisted the Germans. That means the Germans came in, they resisted, and the Germans left. And then a treaty was reached. This was about 3 weeks before the liquidation of the ghetto. This was something I read about, I knew about, but then I started plotting out what happened and when it happened on that day, September 1st, 1943. And I wanted to show you here. Could you see my cursor? Yeah. So this was walled off over here. And so the Germans were forced to come into the gate from up here and around, and this was the only entryway here. And here were the strongholds. So now if you see where the dots are, these white dots represented the points of resistance where the ghetto fighters went with weapons. And what they did was something that became apparent once you plotted out, is their strategy. Because what they did is they squeezed the corridor. That means the Germans could not come in, and they were able to block where all their arms were and their headquarters were. Which was something that is very, very difficult when I just throw numbers of addresses at you and say, this happened there, and an hour later, they went there. And another one, something that I noticed, no, it's not there, it is in, I apologize. I seem to have forgotten where it is. This is the religious. A lot of the religious life in the ghetto is not something that we have a great history about. Most of the survivors we have were not necessarily, they weren't part of these youth groups. They weren't part of the religious youth groups that kind of kept this going. But what you see here, all the blue dots, and this is a tiny area. We're talking like between 15th and 16th, half an avenue. As in I could walk around this whole place, what I'm circling now, in probably like 90, 120 seconds. And a religious community sprang up in the ghetto. Which is something, again, very difficult to get a sense from the books, very difficult to get a sense of elsewhere, but you're saying they crowded into one specific kind of 1 or 2 block building and created their own religious community where there was kosher butchers. One of the very actually interesting tidbits is they voted, the ghetto leaders voted and they enforced, no, they didn't enforce, they mandated that horse meat be allowed into the ghetto. This was one of the few religious splits that we have still a kind of sense of, that they just didn't have enough food and horse meat came in. On that note, I will say some of the things that came out, again, were all this texture, were all this life, including some humor. So there was a jail. Let me show you a picture of the jail. This was an old picture of the jail. where the courtyard is now. The building is one of all the buildings are still extant. The geography is still the same. You can still kind of walk in. You can see the courtyard pretty much like this with some minor renovations. And the jail served a function. It was totally run by Jews. There was a Jewish jury with a Jewish court system, with Jewish lawyers, with Jewish defendants, Jewish prosecutors. But the jail was used also for what we would consider criminals, but also for things like keeping people in line. So if you didn't keep your courtyard clean, there was a sanitary police, and the sanitary police would come and put you in jail. Because probably, I would say, the main goal of all the organization of the ghetto was to keep it epidemic-free. And the Vilna Ghetto is the only major ghetto that had no outbreak. It's said that the Vilna Ghetto is the only major ghetto that could have lived indefinitely under the conditions of 1941 to 1943. But the jail was also used for people keeping in line for things that we might not be able to relate to as well. There's one that's brought down in Herman Crook's book. Somewhere in mid-1942, a woman was put in jail for overturning her neighbor's cholent. There was another case also brought down in Herman Crook's book of they had a lot of fake marriages. They had fake marriages because people got the sheinin, which allowed one person got a sheinin, and they were allowed one spouse and 2 children. So 3,000 of these were granted, which allowed 12,000 people to legally be in the ghetto. But most people, either their spouse had already been murdered or they didn't have children, so there was a lot of fictitious marriages. So people would be like, you guys are married and these are your children, you are married and these are your children. So mothers were married to children, mothers were married to their own sons, siblings were married to each other, strangers all of a sudden got new fathers. And then Herman Crook brings down, and even when Herman Crook writes it, he finds it a little bit funny. He says that a woman was put in jail for stabbing her fake husband out of jealousy and got thrown into jail. And these are cute stories, but it does point to something a lot bigger, is that this place was a real place. And it is hard from this distance and from this time to say, this is a place where people lived, where between 12,000 and 20,000 people lived and had a society. A tremendous amount of research has been done into the theater, and a tremendous amount of controversy is where the famous line is, can you have theater in a graveyard? And that becomes a sense of controversy, but in the ghetto itself, it was only controversy for the first viewing. So I have a whole thing dedicated to art and culture. I just want to show you some of the stills. That's a still from the Vilna Ghetto, of not even one of their major productions. They had 5 major productions that meant orchestra. They adapted Broadway plays. They adapted very popular Polish plays, Hebrew plays, with full orchestra ensembles, full characters, full set designs. This is a minor one. And you can even see the costumes. They had props of things that were illegal, like typewriters and radios and telephones. And again, I encourage you, this is all online, it's at reVilna.org. You could go online and look at it yourself. I do encourage you to do this. And one of the things I want is to give people a sense of the place and to organize it and make it an intuitive way to explore this kind of things. Another thing I would like to quickly mention is that what we did is I made a big part of the design went into making it as easy and intuitive as possible to change. So all of this stuff is actually dynamic and be changed in a matter of minutes. I'd like to show a quick example of what happened about a month ago. Walla magazine in Israel, which is one of the major magazines, did a story about the reVilna project, focusing very much about contemporary Lithuania and this idea of, and my Hebrew is okay, it's not great, but I translated it, I understood, and she was a very interesting journalist, very smart, and I didn't really think anything of it. About 2 weeks after it was published, I got an email. Nope, that's not it. I got an email from a man born in 1938 from the Vilna Ghetto named Indil. He lives in Nahariya, and he wrote, Menachem, you can see it, I'm very happy to see your work. It's very meaningful to me. I want you to know there's a place on the map that I think you've forgotten. There was a place that I went personally, which was the HKP factory, which was a little bit outside the ghetto, which I knew about, and I had all these issues that it's not in the ghetto, should I include it, should I not? But then he sent me, not only did he sent me a link to this place, and I knew where it was. No, sorry. And that's where it is. This is the HKP factory, which was kind of like a satellite work camp where Jews were rounded up, run by a relatively sympathetic German. A lot of people survived from here. A lot of the survivors were either partisans or in the HKP work camp. And he said, I had this personal experience here. It would mean a lot to me if you put it on. So within minutes, I'll just give you a sense of how quickly I could do this. I did it this morning. I went to Google Maps. I turned on the latitude longitude marker. I found the latitude longitude. No, I keep doing that. I put it into my spreadsheet, and this is direct. I don't have any computer programming know-how whatsoever. And then, I'll show you over here, HKP 562, right there. And there's a picture of it. And again, that's really what I want to leave with. The map is limited in all sorts of ways that I find very interesting and also very frustrating. It doesn't do people well, for example. And it was something I didn't foresee when I started the map. How do I put Avram Sutzkever in the map? If someone's not related to a geographical place or an event that happened in a specific region, the map is very limited. But I did find it to be very enriching of like, here I can organize all this information that in most forms would be very confusing and very overwhelming for people who don't want to spend a lot of time doing it. Once we had the database, it was suggested to me to make a mobile version. So if any of you could do it on your phones at revilna.org on your phone, you can see the mobile version. And if any of you are in Vilnius anytime soon, it has GPS. It's GPS enabled, so it will tell you where you are in the ghetto. We'll show you the nearby, for lack of a better word, attractions or points of interest, and show you those relevant pictures. And to me, this is, again, I do find it limited. It's something that I've struggled with over the last year and a half since it came out. But for me, really, there's a message here that there's like a new way to approach the data and the information, a new way to make it easier and relevant. And the books are incredibly important. I can't say enough about how important Herman Crook's book was. And to me, it's become an organizational challenge. So I do, again, thank you so much for Nusakh Vilna and for YIVO for hosting this event. And I'm going to take any questions and answers to come to me personally after the event, and I'd like to re-invite Elliott back up.
Shekoach Menachem. Just as the Kruk translation, which Nusakh Vilna sponsored, and yes, my father Shimka Alav Hasholem couldn't understand why it took the Harshov so long to translate, because footnotes and contextualization and but just as that made possible Menachem's outstanding work, his work will make possible the humanization and approach to understanding this place of the Vilna Ghetto for thousands and thousands and thousands to come. On a personal note, on one of the slides you saw a little affiche, a poster, 100,000 Bücher. Did you see the slide? 100,000 Bücher was a great celebration in the ghetto. In order to keep people's morale up, they encouraged people to borrow books from the library, and for children to borrow books from the library. 100,000 Bücher was the ghetto-wide celebration of having lent the 100,000th book. That's the spirit of Vilne. On a second personal note, you saw those two large buildings at the HKP. Those were called the Billige Häuser of Suboc. The welfare houses, the cheap houses. My father's family lived in the second of those Billige Häuser, on the first floor. And mein Bobbe had a little grocery for Yiddish seminaristen who went to a theological seminary that was kept in those houses before the war. Vilna, even under the worst circumstances, was a place of life. Es hat gesprudelt Jiddischkeit zwischen die Bruchsteine. Binyumen, Yelena, seid ihr sehr gut. Kommt zurück.
This next song was written by Bella Schaechter Gottesman, who passed away last year. We wanted to honor her memory. She was a poet and a songwriter and a wonderful human being. She wasn't in Vilna. She grew up in Bukovina, but she's also a survivor. And this song talks about experiences and feelings that most of the people will be able to relate to. When I break through the portals of time and space, I see you stand in front of me and you smile at me. My childhood friend, Mince. We grew up together on the same street, and the world was wide open for us, and nobody could predict what would happen soon, that our street will be engulfed in flames. Some were sent to the hell of Transnistria, some were sent in ghettos, some ran. You were shot somewhere on the way. After the war, when I go by your house, it's empty. And on the steps sits a shadow. It's your mother. But you are not there. My childhood friend, Mince.
Wenn ich brech durch die Tieren von Ort und von Zeit, stehst du vor mir in vernäppelter Weid. Und von unter die Zahmen verlegter Vier, du schmeichelst dein ewigen Schmeichel zu mir, mein chaverte Minzchen. Gewachsen in einem auf derselbiger Gass, Kinder zu fliegen und spielen und Spaß, Kirchen ist voll mit Gelächter und Freude, die gore Welt auf uns offen und frei. Nur wer wollt gericht sich auf viele Getracht, als neunt bei der Schwell wart auf finstere Nacht. Und unser Stein, das wie ein feuriger Strom, wird werden verschlungen in finsteren Turm. Mein chaverte Minzchen. Wer in Gehennem Transnister verschickt, wer in die Ghettos verzahmt und verstickt, wer sich entlaufen über Nester, wo hätt, du bist gefallen, erschossen in Weg. Nach der Milchome, ich geh durch dein Haus, pust wie a Chore von Häuser das Haus. Und auf die Treppe sitzt vernjuret und grau, a Schotten, dein Mame, noch du bist nicht da. Mein chaverte Minzchen.
This song is from the Warsaw Ghetto, and it mentions General Frank, who was the head of the occupied Poland. Why should we worry? Why should we cry? We're going to say Kaddish soon for Frank. We should be happy and tell each other jokes. We're going to sit Shiva for Hitler. And those who take us to Treblinka, the earth will open up and swallow them. And we will dance on the German graves.
Was darfen mir weinen, was darfen mir sorgen? Mir wollen noch Franken, na Kaddisch noch sorgen. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye. Lass mir sein freilich und sorgen sich witzen. Mir wollen noch Hitler und Schewe noch sitzen. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. Die Sonne, wo's fahren, uns dort kein Treblinke. Sie wollen werden in Dreher dein Gesinken. Yari bye, 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 bye. Yari bye, 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 bye. mit Hashem tanzen auf deutsche Quorum. Yadibay, yay, 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 yadibay, bye, 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 bye. Yadibay, yay, 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 yadibay, bye, bye, bye. Yadibay, yay, 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 yadibay, bye, 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 bye. Yadibay, yay, 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 yadibam, bam, bam, bye.
A number of years ago, when the leadership of Nusakh Vilna realized that their ranks were getting smaller and their energy was waning, they wanted to assure that the tradition of Nusakh Vilna's annual gathering and its activity would be maintained. And so they brought their archives and their limited amount of funds to the YIVO with the bitnai, with the condition that YIVO maintain this tradition. And indeed, it was the right kind of shidduch. YIVO is the representative of that spirit in our world today and has, bekoved, maintained that tradition. I do ask all who are interested enough to be here to become YIVO members and YIVO supporters. It is a gem, a jewel of an institution. Und leider werden unsere Ranken ausgeschüttert. Hier haben wir ungeheuren zwei teure Chaveren von Nusakh Vilna. Ich will der Monen Thomas an der noch nehmen, kämen euch der Monen. We've lost two dear friends of Nusakh Vilna. We've lost Bashevke Konskiran. Bashevke Konskiran at the age of 98. Loved mother, grandmother, and to you, the wife, helper, supporter of Lazaran, the great historian of Vilna. I remember as a child we used to play with playing cards of Yiddish Schreiber that Lazaran put together. There are two gorgeous albums on the life of Vilna, huge albums of documents and photos that Lazaran put together. We also lost at the age of 100 Yonye Fein. Yonye Fein, a begabter Künstler, a Maler, a feiner Poet, a verrakschender Mensch, a Litvak, a professor of art. I remember as we went to his 100th birthday celebration and he recited poetry, hat noch ausgehat Hoffnungen, als Jiddisch wird haben und hat Akeum, ein Optimist. Haben wir verloren, noch seinen 100. Geburtstag, Yonye Fein. Seid zu gedenken und euch die alle Pfarse und die, die sind umgekommen, al Kiddush Hashem ve Kiddush Ha'am, will ich verbeten dem Lehrer, meiner gewesenen Lehrer, Michael Baran, soll kommen und uns führen in der Haskore.
Danke. El Malerachamim, Schaechter, Baran-Gerold, Hametzei, Menucha u'Nechavoino, Alle Kanfei Hashchina, Im Alois Gedoshim u'Toirim, Gezoah Horakia Mazhirim, Es Nishmois, Achenu Bnei Yisrael HaGedoshim v'Yadchoirim, Shehometzu, V'shenegu, V'shenitchetu, V'shenisrefu, V'shenitbeu, V'shenechleku, Beghetto Vilna Yerushalayim Dalita, Usviroseha, Beponar, Betpadrinke, Bemaidanek, Bestutov, of Chol Machnos Moes, Al Kiddush Hashem, Al Yedei, Agrimanim Herotzchim, Vezrehem, Miramim, Yemach Shmam Vizichram, Baru, Shekol Akol, Noidri Bitzdoko, Garas Koras Nishmo Esehem, Begadaydahem, Tehawe Menuchatam, Lochein Balarachamim, Yastirem Bezesek Nafav Leilamim, Vitzrar Achayim, Es Nishmo Esehem, Adonai Hu Nachlatam, Yenuhu, Shalom Amishkavo Esehem, Beneimar Amen. And now we'll say Kaddish B'tzibur. Is Gadal, Ve'is Kadash, Shmei Rabbah, V'yalmod Divrach Yerusei, V'yamelich Malchusei, V'chayechoin, V'yamechoin, of Chayei, D'chol Beis Yisrael, V'agala, U'vizman Koriv, V'yamru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach, Le'olam Ul'olmei Olmaya, Yisbarach V'yishtabach V'yispoar, V'yisreimam V'yisnasei, V'yisadar V'yisalei V'yisalal, Shmei Dekudisha Brichu, Le'elam Min Kol B'chata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechamata, Tamiram Be'alma V'yemru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Ben Shmaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael V'yemru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mreimav, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yemru Amen. Mit 70 Jahren zurück in einem Chodesh Elul ist ein Kampf mit den deutschen Soldaten und estonische Polizisten umgekommen, Hirschgeglick, der Verfasser von Sognisch Kemel als der Geist am letzten Weg. Wir merken ab dem Jahrzeit heint mit ein paar Sätzen wegen dem Singer von Vilna Ghetto bei der Dosiker Treuer Akademie. Hirschgeglick hat durchgemacht die Überlebenden, Auftreistungen und geistige Verwandlungen von jüdischen Jungen da auf ein Schwer von der Scheudern gekommen. Hat gehofft die Hoffnungen von sein Dorf. Hat gesehen dem Umkommen von sein Volk. Hat getrunken Treis Aufmunterung für sein Volk mit seiner Granitwärter von Sognisch Kemel. Alle in Ghetto Vilna und dann alle in die Kazetten und in die Knechtarbeiten und später in die Fußesiden in die Ghettos und äußer die Ghettos, haben in ihm gesehen dem Ausdrücker von sehr teures dicken Pein und sehr teures dicke Hoffnung und seine Werte von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee, hat man der Sehn dem klar Ausdruck hat von allen Jeden, in alle Länder, von Pein und von Hoffnung. Und man hat von sie daher dem Ansatz von einer neuen Kufe von jüdischem Leben als Erfolg. Was geht sich nicht unter als Erfolg? Wo gefallen ist ein Spritz von unser Blut, sprotzen wird dort unser Bruder, unser Mut. Und hat ihm der Sehn dem jungen Dichter sehr von jüdischem Klau. Und so ist rein in der Geschichte der Sohn von der jüdischen Armkeit von Vilna, der Singer von der Tkufe von fallenden Gewand, der Verursacher von der Hemmschrigkeit von der jüdischen Geschichte und von jüdischem Kampf. Man hat ihm der Sehn dem Übergeber von der Volkszerboe, von Ghetto, Deures zu kommende Deures und Freiheit, das soll sein von dort zu nah. Elle?
In a moment, we will all rise together to sing the hymn of the partisans, Zognish Kemo. I'm Elliott Palevsky. Nobody introduced me. And I'm doing this program as part of a kibbut avei. I'm honoring my father, Olav Sholem, and my mother, Tzalan Giyol. My mother, Elliott Palevsky, is the action behind the continuation of this program. And no one who does this hasn't heard from her. Make sure you're going to do it right. Make sure you've chosen the poems, and make sure you've got the right music and the finest listen. And I want to acknowledge Chayele and my late father Shimon, partisans of Vilna, survivors of the ghetto, for being those who wanted to be sure that this tradition would be maintained. To honor my mom, die Reusen Mames and the Und jetzt der Eulen wird sich also gut sein und aufstellen, weil wir zusammen singen den Partisanen-Hymn.
Als du gehst den letzten Weg, Gott Himmeln bleien, verstellen bleien Tag. Kommen wird nach unser ausgebänkter Schau, es wird abbeugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Kommen wird nach unser ausgebänkter Schau, es wird abbeugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee, wir kommen an mit unser Bein, mit unser Weg. Und wo gefaust das Sprotz von unser Blut, sprotzen wird auf unser Quote, unser Mut. Und wo gefaust das Sprotz von unser Blut, sprotzen wird auf unser Quote, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgensonne begilden unser Feind, und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Läuft versammeln wird die Sonne dem Kajor, wie Baran-Gerold soll gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Läuft versammeln wird das Lied in dem Kajor, wie Baran-Gerold soll gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei, es ist nicht kein Lied von einer Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat der Volk zwischen Baum und dick gewähnt, das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat der Volk zwischen Baum und dick gewähnt, das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Da sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg, was Himmeln bleien, verstellen bleien Tag. Kommen wird nach unser ausgebänkter Schau, es wird erbeugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Kommen wird nach unser ausgebänkter Schau, es wird erbeugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da.
Danke euch alle für Kommen. Wir wünschen euch alle ein gut,
gesund und glücklich Jahr.
Und lassen wir sich alle begegnen, Gesundheit über ein Jahr.
Ja, ist gut, alle weg, ist gut.
Okay, ja.